Purpose of a poster presentation is to serve as a form of media. The poster allows you to demonstrate and communicate the work that you've done over the course of your research project. It should be clear and concise, easy to follow and understand. So for our purposes, your posters are going to cater to a general audience. So the poster really serves as a visual aid. And in that purpose, it should be clear, it should be of interest, and it should aim to retain audience interest. So visual aids are evaluated on the basis of whether they add that clarity, that interest, that retention. How well is it constructed? How well is it put together? And how well do you use it? How well is it used and integrated into your discussion as you're presenting your poster? So what are some of the important things that you'll need for an effective poster presentation? The poster itself should be well designed. You'll need to prepare a quick 2 to 3 minute story that communicates the main points of your project. And you should have a complete understanding and knowledge of your project. Also helpful are handouts to give to your audience, artifacts, if that is something that's relevant for your project, and most importantly, enthusiasm. So telling your story, you can think of how you might do this in a 1-minute summary of the project. You would want to describe your research, addressing the importance and the relevance that you see of your research, what data you collected, how it was collected, what was the method of analysis, what were the key findings, and the key conclusions that you could draw from the findings of your research. And are there any next steps for your research? For example, if the research that you've completed has led to a new research question and possibly a new project, you want to be able to describe that briefly as well. So in creating handouts, what's some important information to include? This should be very basic, straightforward. Your name, the title of your project, your contact information, a small print of your poster is also helpful. Any supplemental information such as key data that you used in conducting your research. And it should basically just be something that's going to fit on one piece of paper. So in terms of effective communication, what is most important? You want to think about the audience first. You want to put yourself in the shoes of your audience and think about what you would want to hear if you were listening. You want to give the audience your full attention. At the same time, you want to be conversational. You want to be able to translate the information on your poster so that anyone could understand your project. They would not need to be a specialist in your field. You want to make eye contact frequently. Sometimes what's helpful is using note cards to touch on key points or to remember key points that you want to mention as you're speaking. And you want to adapt the message to the audience. So this might mean that you are translating kind of technical terms that may apply to your particular project into plain language that anyone could understand. And you want to be enthusiastic. People are going to be engaged and they're going to be very interested when you're enthusiastic about your research. And one helpful guide is to use signposts. So for example, if you're hitting on some key points, first, second, next, finally, when you're going to make some concluding remarks, and this kind of helps to pull the story together and give the audience a sense of where your short story is going to be going, how everything kind of fits together. Another important thing is to speak clearly but loudly. When we were giving poster presentations in a large auditorium, this would be particularly important because you'd want to make sure that your voice carries over the voices of many other people who might be presenting and participating in that room. For the purposes of your virtual presentation, clear communication is also important. In terms of answering questions, you might anticipate that your audience will have particular questions about your research. So one thing that you can do is to create and practice some key facts and information that you kind of anticipate will answer some of the questions that your audience might have. In a live presentation, you can also involve the audience in answering questions. And in that way, you're asking the audience for feedback and asking them what they think the question may be. And this is one way of engaging them and keeping them interested. And if you don't know the answer to something, we can just simply say so. You can, certainly not problematic if you don't have all the answers. Managing anxiety. Nervousness in delivering a presentation is completely normal. So practice and preparation are really the best ways to manage that anxiety. Feeling prepared, you kind of know what you want to say, how you want to time yourself in terms of delivering your presentation, and understand that it is perfectly okay to not have all the answers. You want to focus on speaking clearly. If you tend to speak quickly, kind of slow the rate of speech if necessary. And really just remember that most of that nervousness that you feel is not visible to the audience. Again, if we were delivering our presentations personally, dressing professionally is important. Having a name tag that identifies you. Being physically close to your poster and even engaging people as they approach to try to draw them in and interest them in hearing your 2 to 3 minute presentation. In terms of how posters are judging, there are two key different criteria. There's a set of criteria for STEM posters that would look at key points such as how clearly your hypothesis and the goals of your research are stated, the experimental logic, are the experimental methods clear? Do they relate to the hypothesis or the goal of the project? In terms of results, is the presentation of data clear, thorough, and logical? Are there substantial amounts of data that were presented? Did they sufficiently address the hypothesis or the goals of your project? Were there reasonable conclusions given? Did those conclusions appear to be connected to the project goals and to the hypothesis that you stated? And the text on the poster should be concise. It should be proofread and free of spelling errors. Figures and tables should be labeled appropriately. So all of those key components are important in looking at a STEM project. So achieving these goals would result in a very effective poster presentation. For non-STEM projects, these are judged a little bit differently, but also key important things are the organization of the content. Is everything logically organized? Does it reflect a scholarly presentation? Does it effectively provide an abstract of the research, state a research question, review the appropriate literature and methods? Does the content include scholarly knowledge? Is information presented clearly and concisely? Does it provide a clear picture of the topic, of the project? And in terms of the poster, the physical poster itself, does it have a neat and professional appearance? The fonts are uniform. The title can be easily identified at the top. So here, achieving these goals would result in a very effective non-STEM poster presentation. Another important component is preparation of the elevator speech. So imagine that you are in the elevator with the president of CityTech, and he has extra funding. Can you convince him to fund your research project before you reach the 11th floor of the NAM building? So basically, in a 1-minute exercise, you'd want to be able to tell the story of your presentation, of your research, in 1 minute to the person next to you. So again, what's important as a reminder, that 1-minute summary, you want to be able to describe the research topic you're addressing, why it's important, why it's relevant, what data you collected and how you collected that data, what method of analysis did you use, what were the key findings, and finally, what conclusions can be drawn from those findings. And if there are next steps for the research, such as a new research question that your project led to, you want to be able to describe that briefly. So some important reminders in terms of upcoming deadlines. There will be a workshop on designing a research poster presentation, poster design workshop on Thursday, November 12th at 1 to 2 p.m., which will be given by Professor Amanda Allman on Zoom. And important dates in terms of the presentation itself is November 4th would be the deadline for submitting poster presentation information. And November 19th for submitting a poster and elevator pitch, that 1-minute elevator pitch that contains all of the important elements that we've talked about. The virtual poster presentation judging will occur on December 2nd. And finally, the awards ceremony will be on December 3rd, 2020, from 12:45 to 2:15 p.m. on Zoom. So we look forward to your poster presentations. And there will be follow-up with a short quiz, some short questions, just to kind of review what we've covered during this short presentation.